I don't ever want anybody to think that I think that I'm better than anybody else, because
Yes.
I don't think like that.
And in 2014 after 31 years of marriage. But what came next was worse than the grief. His own children turned against her. They fought over the estate. They questioned the money. And then the internet exploded with accusations, music, that she had taken $2.3 million from her own church. Shirley Caesar had spent decades, music, preaching honesty. Now she was defending herself against the loudest voices she, music, had ever faced. The audit told one story. The headlines told another. And what really happened inside that church might shock everyone who thought they knew her. Shirley and Caesar Williams came into the world on October 13, 1938 in Durham, North Carolina, where a crowded little house held 13 children and the sound of gospel never stopped. Space, music, was tight and money was thin. Yet the place always felt full because music moved through every corner. Her father, James Caesar, called Big Jim, spent long days at the tobacco factory and long nights leading the Just Came foray. When he rehearsed at home, the walls carried his harmonies, and young Shirley listened like those notes were guiding her somewhere she didn't yet understand. Her brothers formed quartets of their own, and church songs floated through the room so often that Shirley breathed music as naturally as she breathed air. She watched her father's style and copied his tone. And before long, she was singing in local churches with a voice that surprised people because it came from someone so small. Big Jim wasn't just a worker trying to feed a large family. He was loved across the Corollas for his voice and his preaching, and people showed up wherever he sang. His rehearsals brought neighbors, music, into the house and gave Shirley a front row seat to real gospel life. Everything seemed steady until one day in 1950, when Shirley was 7, her father suffered a seizure and died in an instant. The house fell into silence that no choir could fill. She carried a painful memory from that day, believing for years that he died because he, music, had whipped her earlier for breaking street lights. It marked the end of her childhood and left her with a wound she didn't know how to name. Music and faith would eventually help her face it. But at that time, everything felt heavy. After his death, the weight shifted to her mother, Shirley Caesar, who struggled to move around because of a lame leg. Raising 13 children with no solid income was nearly impossible. And Shirley began to help in music ways other children her age never had to. She cooked, she cleaned, she cared for her siblings, and she sang whenever she could to earn a little money. She watched her mother refuse to give up even when, music, the house seemed to sit on the edge of collapse. That stubborn strength shaped Shirley, and she found comfort in church when the world outside felt unsafe. Those years taught her resilience. They taught her to lean on her voice and her faith when nothing else seemed dependable. As she pushed through grief, something inside her kept rising. By 8, she was already singing solos in local churches, turning heads because her tone carried a depth far beyond her age. People started calling her that little Caesar girl because she could hold a room the way grown singers did. By 10, she was performing with the Just Came for and traveling, music, across the Corollas. Churches requested her by name and revival welcomed her like she was already a star. It was unusual to see a child command stages like that, and one performance flowed into the next until her reputation spread across neighboring towns. During her early teens, she started traveling with evangelist Loie Johnson from Music, Port South, Virginia. His television program put her on TV long before most teenagers could even dream of such exposure. She became Baby Shirley, appearing on a broadcast that reached far beyond her hometown. In the segregated South of the early 1950s, this kind of opportunity was rare for a young black girl. Through Johnson, she recorded her first single and built a network that stretched across states. Television taught her how to speak to crowds she couldn't see, and she developed a confidence that made people remember her long after the show ended. Her first official recording came in 1951 when she was barely 12 or 13. She stepped into the studio and sang I'd Rather Jesus for Federal Records. They described her as a 12-year-old lass on the record, even though she had just turned 13. It didn't matter. The song spread through gospel, music, circles and marked her as a prodigy. Most gospel stars were adults, so a young girl breaking through like that drew attention quickly. She kept touring with Leroy Johnson and supporting her family, carrying more responsibility than anyone her age should have. Yet, she pushed forward because something in her felt certain. As the years passed, she enrolled at North Carolina Central College to study business education. College opened new doors, but she felt a tug pulling her away from academic life. Her heart stayed with gospel music and ministry. Even when she tried to focus on school, segregation and inequality added pressure, and she found herself caught between two paths. She wanted to make her mother proud with a degree. Yet she sensed that her calling was somewhere else. That conflict grew until one ordinary day when she sat in a classroom taking a typing test. In the middle of the exam, she heard someone call her name. She looked beside her, but no one had spoken. Later, while lying on her bed, she heard the same voice tell her that she had been called from her mother's womb and anointed to preach the gospel. The moment felt so vivid and, music, so clear that she could not ignore it. She knew she couldn't chase a conventional career anymore. With that clarity, she stepped away from college and moved toward full-time ministry. At 19 in 1958, she gathered her courage and approached Albertina Walker, the leader of the Caravans. This group was already known as a powerhouse in gospel, responsible for launching talents like James Cleveland and Inez Andrews. Walker listened to Shirley and immediately felt something in her voice. She invited her to join the group and Shirley accepted, music, without hesitation. She had been singing since childhood, but this was the first time she stood beside legends. Joining the Caravans marked the beginning of a new chapter that blended her youthful fire with the group's established history. Once she stepped onto the stage with them, her style became impossible to miss. The Caravans were known for strong harmonies, but Shirley brought a different kind of energy. She poured emotion into every note, and she wasn't afraid to step off the stage and speak directly to audiences. Her sermonettes, short-spoken messages woven into songs, became a signature part of her performances. In songs like Hallelujah, It's Done, she delivered a sermonette that fans still talk about. Some members needed time to adjust to her unconventional approach. But her presence soon proved to be too powerful to ignore. Crowds responded to her with excitement and connection, and her fan base grew. During her years with the Caravans, she performed several key songs that lifted her reputation even higher. Sweeping through the city and No Coward Soldier showcased her voice and her command of emotional storytelling. Her performances, music, blended scripture, testimony, and song until listeners felt like they were witnessing worship and a concert at the same time. These moments helped shape gospel music, and her influence within the group grew until she stood out as one of their defining voices. By 1966, she felt a pull towards something larger. After 8 years with the Caravans, she decided to leave and form her own group, the Shirley Caesar Singers. It was a risky choice. She was walking away from a brand that had made her famous. The group soon dissolved as other members left too, and Shirley stepped into the uncertain world of independent ministry with nothing but her determination and her small following. She trusted her calling more than the safety of a famous name. She relied on faith rather than industry support, and slowly her new path began to take shape. The risk brought tension, but it brought possibility too. She faced an industry where success wasn't promised. Yet, she kept moving with the same fire she had as a child, singing solos in Durham churches. Her decision paid off when she won her first Grammy in 1972, music, proving that faith and courage could build something remarkable. Her rise from poverty, heartbreak, and constant responsibility turned her into one of gospel's most celebrated figures. Shirley Caesar stepped into 1966 with a kind of courage that seemed to rise from somewhere deep inside her. She had been a key part of the Caravans, one of the most beloved gospel groups in the country. Yet something in her wanted to stand on her own and carry, music, her message further. So she walked away and formed the Shirley Caesar Singers, a small group that let her shape every moment of her ministry. Once she started, she hardly slowed down because she believed that if she reached one church, then another would hear her name. And soon, entire communities would know her voice. She moved through the church circuit with relentless energy. Sometimes taking on more than 100 engagements in a single year, traveling from small rural churches to large revival. People didn't just come for a performance. They came for a full experience because she mixed sermons with songs and poured everything she had into each moment. Slowly she built something powerful, and by the early 1970s her name was spreading everywhere as more people felt the spiritual fire she carried with her. Then a moment arrived in 1972 that changed everything. Her solo decision, which had once seemed risky, turned into a breakthrough when she won her first Grammy Award for Best Soul Gospel Performance for her version of Put Your Hand in the Hand of the Man from Galilee. That win came like a confirmation that all the long nights and miles travel had been worth it. The song became a gospel favorite across the country because her voice held a kind of strength that pulled people in and kept them there. Over the years, she would win 11 Grammys. But that first win in Music, 1972 felt like the one that opened the door and told the world she was here to stay. As she kept moving, her concerts grew more unique because she wove sermons into her music until the two felt inseparable. She would be singing one moment and then shift into a sermonette that touched something personal in every listener. Sometimes she talked to the crowd as if she had known them for years. She used this talk-singing style to lift the room and pull people closer to her message. Soon her shows gained a reputation for their emotional depth. And fans began to see her not only as a performer but as a spiritual guide. This connection helped her recordings grow even stronger and her music audience kept expanding. Even with all the traveling and singing, she refused to put her education aside. She believed that building a ministry required not only passion but also an understanding of how to manage and grow it. So she went back to school and earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Shaw University in 1984, graduating magna cum laude. This accomplishment showed her discipline and her desire to improve every part of her work. Her degree helped her organize her ministry in smarter ways and navigate the business side of gospel music. Through her commitment to education, she showed other artists that you could lift your spirit and sharpen your mind at the same time. Her early years as a solo artist slowly built the foundation for the title people later gave her. Fans and fellow musicians began calling her the First Lady of Gospel long before the entire country recognized it. They saw how much she traveled, how deeply she poured herself into ministry, and how her voice carried something that set her apart. By the time she entered the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2000, the title felt like it had always belonged to her. She had become a leader for future gospel singers, showing them what dedication, innovation, and faith could create. One of the most emotional moments in her career came in 1975 with her recording of No Charge. The song had started as a country tune in 1974 written by Harlan Music Howard, but Shirley Caesar brought her own spirit into it. Her version reached number 40 on the Billboard Music Hot Soul Singles chart and spread into pop radio, something very rare for gospel artists at the time. When she recorded it, she mixed her spoken sermon style with her soulful singing and created something unforgettable. People outside church communities heard it and felt the message. And that crossover success opened doors for many gospel artists after her. The story inside Music, No Charge touched people in a simple but powerful way. It followed a young boy who hands his mother a bill for chores he believed he deserved payment for, listing things like mowing the yard and cleaning his room. His mother responds by reminding him of everything she has done for him since birth. Each act marked with the words, "No charge." When the boy tears up his bill and writes that his love for her also comes at no charge, listeners felt something rise in them. The message went straight to the heart of working families in the 1970s who understood sacrifice and unconditional love. With Shirley Caesar guiding the story, the song became a lesson that stayed with people long after the music faded. As No Charge gained attention, pressure grew around her. Record labels and some fans wanted her to create more songs that could reach secular audiences, but she held tightly to her gospel roots. She believed her purpose was to deliver Christian messages, even if that meant turning away from bigger commercial opportunities. That tension shaped many decisions she made in the years that followed. She found ways to reach wide audiences while still keeping her music grounded in faith. Because of that, she earned respect from people both inside and outside the gospel world. In 1980, she reached another milestone with her album Rejoice, which won her first Dove Award. This moment helped Music her expand her national presence and proved once again that her message was music, connecting with thousands. Across the years, she won multiple Dove Awards and 13 Stellar Awards along with several Grammys for albums like Stand Still, Celine, Celebration, and his Working It Out for You. These achievements showed that she wasn't just a church favorite anymore. She had become a national gospel star whose voice carried across generations. Along with her music, she stepped fully into ministry. Though she had begun preaching in 1961, her official pastoral journey at Mount Calvary Word of Faith Church in Raleigh, North Carolina began after she married Bishop Harold Ivory Williams in 1983. She was ordained in 1990 and became a pastor who managed to balance church leadership with a global music career. Her sermons blended scripture and everyday struggles, helping thousands connect with her messages in real ways. In 2022, she preached and performed for more than 3,000 people at the Duke Energy Center for the Performing Arts in Raleigh, proving that she still carried the same fire she had decades earlier. Her church became a center for community and spiritual growth, and she dreamed of expanding it into a place that included affordable housing and a performing arts center. Her leadership turned the church into a landmark for inspiration in North Carolina. Her outreach stretched far beyond the pulpit. For over 38 years, her outreach ministries provided food, clothing, and emergency help to families in need. Every year, her church hosted a Christmas giveaway where hundreds of families received food, clothes, and toys. In 2024, more than 1,000 people attended, and she personally oversaw the event through regular food programs and clothing drives, especially during crises like the pandemic. She kept her community supported and connected. She funded much of the work through donations and her own resources because she believed that serving people was a sacred duty. She once said she could not sweeten the Atlantic Ocean, but she could take a picture out and sweeten that. A reminder that even small acts could change someone's life. Her dedication to helping others eventually led her into public service. In 1987, she ran for an open seat on the Durham City Council despite warnings that politics might hurt her career. She won support from local groups and was elected, serving 4 years focused on affordable housing, jobs, and support for seniors. She pushed for more industry in Durham and created programs for the poor and elderly. Her campaign carried the same honesty and energy that filled her ministry, and she became known as one of the few gospel artists to serve in elected office. Her goal was simple and clear. She said she wanted to focus on the needy and not the greedy, a principle she carried into every decision she made. Her influence grew so wide that she found herself performing at the White House for every president since Jimmy Carter. One moment that stood out came in 2015 when she performed for President Barack and Michelle Obama during an event honoring gospel music's impact on American culture. President Obama praised her as a quintessential sound of America. She performed No Charge and later sang Take Your Knee Off My Neck, showing her willingness to speak on social justice issues. She also earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and honors from the National Endowment for the Arts. Each appearance carried her message forward and reminded the country of her influence. All these years built a long list of honors: 11 Grammy Awards, 15 Dove Awards, 14 Stellar Awards, the National Heritage Fellowship, induction into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 1989, and the North Carolina Music Hall of Fame in 2004. 2 honorary doctorates from Shaw University, Music, and Southeastern University. The recognition came from everywhere because her impact touched more than music. She became a symbol of faith, dedication, and community service. Shirley Caesar's world shifted in a single moment on July 4, 2014. The day carried her back into a quiet she had never known before, because that was when she lost her husband, Bishop Harold Ivory Williams. They had shared 31 years together and he had led the Mount Calvary Holy Churches of America for 37 of them. Their journey began on June 27, 1983 when they married and later stood side by side as co-pastors at Mount Calvary Word of Faith Church in Raleigh. Thousands came to honor him during the 2-day funeral. Yet all that noise could not touch the silence she felt when she went home without him. She kept leading the church because she believed that was the only way to keep moving. But the grief followed her everywhere and settled deep in her life. Losing her partner, her friend, her musical companion added a weight that shaped everything that came after. Not long after his passing, something even more painful began to unfold. His children, Harold Jr. and Hope, challenged her over the estate. The warmth she had shown them for years made the conflict cut even deeper. People whispered about inheritances, music, and who deserved what. The battle grew larger than anyone expected, touching church buildings, real estate, and even the transfer of assets, music, to private companies. For Shirley, it felt heartbreaking because she had treated them as her own. Yet now, the grief of losing a husband was followed by the shock of losing the closeness she once had, music, with the children she helped raise. While she was still trying to steady herself, rumors burst online in 2018, claiming she had taken $2.3 million in church funds. Those stories came from leaked documents that were never what they seemed. The accusations spread fast, reaching people who barely knew her. They pushed doubt into places where trust had lived for decades. But the independent audit told a different story. Ernst & Young found that 98% of every donation went exactly where it was meant to go. They even found moments where she had used her own money to fill the gaps. She was cleared. Yet the sting of the rumors stayed longer than the truth. It showed her how fragile a reputation could be. When the internet decided to twist a narrative before facts had time to breathe. As she kept serving, a different kind of challenge appeared. False reports, music, of her death started spreading, especially in 2024 and 2025. News feeds filled with claims that she had passed away, music, or was battling throat cancer. The lies grew so loud that strangers came to her house holding prayer cards and flowers. She had to record videos just to prove she was alive. In one clip, she said with a trembling voice that unless she was a living dead person, she knew nothing about her supposed death. The chaos left her shaken because music, was strange to watch the world mourn a woman who was still breathing, still praying, still working. At the same time, she faced criticism online for her beliefs. Some said she was intolerant. Others said she was out of touch. She kept repeating that she did not preach hatred and that she didn't have time to be homophobic. Her focus, she said, was always Christ. She wanted people to hear her message rather than rumors about what she supposedly believed. Still, the noise continued, and she learned that being a public figure meant standing steady while voices on the internet tried to pull her in every direction. Her body carried its own battles, too. Years of non-stop touring, often more than 150 performances each year, placed an enormous strain on her voice. By the late 1980s, doctors found nodules on her vocal cords. She received steroid shots to keep going. Those shots came with music risks, but she took them so she wouldn't cancel shows. Her voice became music, rougher, and speaking became painful at times. Yet, she rarely let herself stop. Ministry mattered too much to her. She kept traveling, kept singing, kept holding services for people who waited months just to hear her. This was the same woman who recorded music, her Live in Chicago album in 1989. While fighting through intense pain, she pushed through music, each session even when her voice felt like it would give up on her. The album became a landmark, and she received the Artist of the Decade award at the Stellar Awards that same year. Her acceptance speech was so soft that the room leaned forward just to hear her. The moment moved people to tears because they realized how much she had sacrificed just to keep ministering through music. Then in September 2025, she collapsed at 85 during a public appearance. People saw her wobble. They saw the exhaustion on her face. When she fell, the room erupted into panic and she was rushed to the hospital. Social media exploded again with fearful messages and speculation. Her spokesperson said she was stable, though they shared little else. Fans waited for updates with hearts in their throats, knowing her body was carrying years of stress and stubbornness. When she finally returned home to rest, it felt like the world exhaled at once. Even after moments like this, she always came back. She preached again. She appeared in interviews. She sang. Her resilience kept surprising people. She said her strength came from God. She believed that if she could speak, she could serve, and if she could serve, she would not stop. The pattern defined her. She was a woman who kept returning even when her body begged, music, for rest. In 2016, a completely unexpected moment pulled her into a new spotlight. A clip from her performance of Hold My Mule went viral. Her line about beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes turned into the You Name It challenge. The internet remixed it, laughed with it, and showed it to millions. She first saw it while on a cruise. A church member held up a phone and she blinked in disbelief. She didn't hate it, she embraced it. She hoped it could raise attention for causes she cared about. Legal trouble surfaced when DJ Suede used the clip without permission, but she handled it with firmness, making sure her image wasn't misused. The meme brought her voice to a younger generation and reminded everyone that gospel music can travel in ways no one expects. Her influence came with honors, too. On June 28, 2016, she received the 2,583rd star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Before that, in 1999, she was awarded the National Heritage Fellowship, which came with a $25,000 recognition. She was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2000 and collected 11 Grammys, 15 Dove Awards, and 14 Stellar Music Awards over her career. Each award was a small echo of the decades she had poured into her calling. She never slowed creatively either. She kept recording into the 2010s and 2020s. In June 2022, she released Fill This House and it climbed the gospel charts. She collaborated with Anthony Hamilton, Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle, and even artists in hip-hop. Producers sampled her voice in new tracks, letting her legacy stretch into genres she never imagined herself crossing. She remained open to fresh sounds while keeping her heart anchored in tradition. Documentaries and tribute specials kept her story alive for new audiences. Unsung highlighted her journey. Celebration of Gospel honored her contributions. She appeared at major award shows singing beside Yolanda Adams and Kelly Clarkson. Each appearance showed her as a bridge between the classic voices of gospel and a modern generation stepping forward behind her. Her music kept finding new life online. Viral clips turned into reminders of her influence. Streaming platforms carried her songs to people across countries and cultures. Even as the industry changed, her message stayed steady. She believed gospel was meant to uplift, and she carried that belief into every era she lived through. Her spiritual discipline is the reason she survived so much. She once shared that she prays for at least 2 hours every morning starting at 4 a.m. She reads the Bible cover to cover every year and memorizes entire chapters. She never misses a Sunday service. When she travels, she sets up a prayer room in her hotel. She has said many times that she doesn't preach for applause, but for souls. For her, ministry was never a performance. It was her purpose. She even served 4 years on the Durham City Council because she believed the gospel belonged everywhere, even in government halls. Along the way, she mentored younger artists. She lifted emerging voices onto her stage. Yolanda Adams and Kirk Franklin often credit her guidance for shaping their careers. She ran a gospel academy to train young singers and ministers. In 2025, Shaw University honored her with a Lifetime Achievement Award because her influence stretched far beyond her own music. Her message to her students was simple and she repeated it often. If you have a gift, use it for God, not for fame. Yet behind her public strength, there were storms. People spread rumors. They wrote headlines about lawsuits. They argued online about her beliefs. She battled exhaustion that pushed her into the hospital in 2022. Critics questioned her intentions and her finances. She faced burnout and loneliness. In a 2025 interview, she admitted she struggled with her public image while dealing with private grief. But each time life tried to pull her under, she rose again and chose integrity over